Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. And today I'm going to be talking about a little bit about different things that really can get in our way of achieving our goals and achieving our health goals in our life. Something I see a lot of the time in myself and in others is we hang on to old stories or old patterns or things from our past that might have been relevant at the time and might have been helpful at the time. However, they just don't help us now. So we kind of hang on to these kind of old stories. And what we do is we kind of rebel against authority of some sort sometimes throughout our life when it's no longer relevant. So I'll give you some examples of what I mean. First of all, we all have different coping mechanisms that we develop in life to deal with different and difficult situations. So we all kind of figure out a way to get through our childhood that works for us, and it might be about putting walls up or being the funny person or being the helpful person or learning how to not be present, learning how to kind of just disappear and not be in the situation. And there's lots of different strategies that we use to cope with what's going on in our childhood. A really common one I see in my clients is the one person who becomes the really helpful one and the one who does everything for everybody, and they sort of go on to become the perfectionist, that type of person. But yeah, it is common for people to just disappear, to sort of just not be present because of whatever's going on. And it is, like I said, you become the joker, you become the funny one, you become the smart one. We do whatever it is that we need to do to get through our childhood. And sometimes it doesn't have to have been a terribly dreadful childhood either. It's just in our different families, it's just whatever we do to fit in and whatever we do to feel part of the family. Essentially, when we are children, especially when you're infants, we are completely reliant on our parents or whoever's our guardians, whoever's looking after us. We're completely reliant on the adults around us to keep us alive, literally. Like we rely on those people for life. And for that reason, we very quickly learn what we need to do to keep those people happy because they are the ones that are keeping us alive, right? The difference is as we get older, when you become a grown up, is that you're not relying on that person for life anymore, but we often play out the same patterns. So we play out those patterns maybe with that original person, that parent, or we play it out with other people in our lives. So where we've learned to kind of disappear and not be present for different things that happen in our childhood, what happens is then we're not present for actually good things that are happening as when we're grown ups. And or if we've been playing whatever role we've been playing, we continue playing that role into adulthood, trying to please people, trying to whatever it is, we just keep doing that as adults, even though we're no longer reliant on that person for survival. What happens is like in our mind, it's ingrained in us that we need that for survival. And as human beings, we do need a tribe. Humans need a tribe. And once upon a time, if you were kicked out of your tribe, it was probably certain death, right? So there was a time in our history that being kicked out of the tribe was certain death. And then as a child, again, if your parents don't look after you, if the adults around you don't look after you, it can mean certain death, right? So in our mind, we've got this, even if it's not a conscious thought, we've got this kind of knowing that to survive, we need to be in the tribe. And to be in the tribe, we need to please people or make people laugh or whatever story we've created from our childhood. So it's important to know that we create all of these stories, and they are stories, and they might have, like I said, they might have actually had a very good purpose when you were a child, but they're no longer serving you. Now, if this brings up a lot of stuff for you, honestly, book in and go and see a counselor or a therapist or someone like that, because it is really important to Work through some of these things and understand some of these things. And if you do have a particularly complicated, or you've had a traumatic childhood, that is really important to do that. So I would just say that please, some of these things are really useful things. I can give you tips and information, and that's great. But sometimes you need to go deeper, and sometimes you need to do more work around these things than what you can get in something like a podcast. So just be aware of if it's triggering stuff in you, and if you're kind of really familiar with this, and it's troubling for you, please go and get help so that you can work through some of this stuff. It's really just really important that if we understand why we behave the way we do, why we act the way in a certain circumstances, when you understand that you're doing it for some reason from the past that is not relevant now, that is not happening now, that can help you relax more around it and kind of go, okay, well, I don't need to do that because I'm not in that situation anymore, right? So I don't need to please everyone because I'm a grown up now. And the truth is that I can look after myself. And while I don't want to do, obviously, you know, you don't want to go and do something dreadful that puts you out of the tribe, as in you end up in prison or something like that. But generally speaking, you don't have to please the tribe all of the time, and you can make some of your own decisions, and you can look after yourself, so we're not kind of in that kind of reliance where we have to please other people to survive. And I think the more that we understand that, the more that we know we can make different decisions. And often it plagues our relationships later in our life, because we'll kind of put up walls or defenses or things like that with our partner that have nothing to do with our partner. We're just reacting to them in the same way that we reacted to whatever threat happened to us when we were younger. So it's important to understand this. The other area I see this come out in is in around things like food, right? So what we do is there's several things that can happen. So one, of course, and I think I will do a whole episode about emotional eating because that is a topic on its own. But one is certainly emotional eating is one of the ways we use food to numb ourselves or to find pleasure, or, for various kind of emotional states, we use food for that. So of course this can show up in that way. It can be about control of food, about less food, about more food, or about what the food does just to kind of numb us, push feelings down, whatever. So that's one of the ways that it comes about in food. But another way it comes about is in us being kind of rebellious around food. So we kind of, and that's when I've talked about in other episodes, and I'm sure I'll talk about in episodes in the future as well, with our language around food, is that we can be really what you'll find is when we kind of sit down and eat, the whole packet of Tim Tams or the whole block of chocolate or whatever it is, a lot of what's going on in our mind, even if it's kind of at a subconscious level, really is kind of rebelling against. Well, you can't tell me what to do, and I can do what I want, and it's that kind of stuff going on. And a lot of that, again, it's old stories. So whether or not it's about a parent or a school teacher or about society or whoever it's about, but essentially what it is it's us kind of rebelling against whoever, whatever, whoever makes the rules, whoever says I'm not supposed to do this, whatever it is. And so when we're making that decision about whether or not we eat the whole packet of Tim Tams, we're basing it around some kind of rebelling against something. And when you're an adult, generally speaking, you make your own choices, right? So you can eat the whole packet of Tim Tams or you cannot eat the whole packet of Tim Tams. That's up to you. But it's not sort of, there's no one, I'm not saying there's not situations or whatever, but generally speaking, there's no one stopping you. It's your choice. And it's totally up to you. Essentially, though, what we need to learn, though, as adults is, one, we need to learn that we make the decisions now. So it's not about rebelling against anybody. Who are you rebelling against, right? So ultimately, we're rebelling against ourselves in the end. But the other thing is that as adults, we make choices, but choices do have consequences, right? So what comes with having that freedom and having that choice is responsibility. So, because there is responsibility attached to this, we need to take it on like a responsibility. So, yes, you can eat the whole packet of Tim Tams, but what's the outcome of that for you? What does that look like? If you're, obviously, if you eat a whole packet of Tim Tams, your blood sugar levels are going to go up, and your poor stomach's not going to like it very much. And I know for me, I'd end up with a massive hangover the next day from it. And it's going to affect overall your health and your weight and other things potentially as well. So if you did it as a one off, probably not a big deal. But if you're doing this all of the time, it's a problem. Same as if you choose to go out and drink all night and not get any sleep. There's consequences to that. You can do that, it's a choice, but there is consequences. So as adults, it's not about rebelling against coulda, shoulda, woulda, who said, who didn't say, what are the rules. They can go jump, I'll do what I want to do, which is a lot of how we make decisions. It's really strange that we do this because we're kind of caught up in this kind of child mind. You can do what you choose to do, obviously within the law. However, there is consequences. So you choose the behavior, you choose the consequence, right? So the more we understand that as adults, the less we do rebelling and the more we kind of go, well, okay, what is the outcome that I'm looking for? Okay, I know what outcome I want. I know what I want things to look like. Okay, so then what behavior leads to that outcome? What can I do differently, or how do I structure things in my life so I get the outcome I want, right? And that is all about you making choices and you choosing your outcome, therefore you choosing your behaviors because they have consequences, right? So it's a very different when we kind of embrace the fact that we're an adult. We step into being an adult in this adult mind, and we approach whether it's food or other lifestyle things or life in itself. We approach it from the point of view as, okay, I'm an adult. I have lots of options. I have choices. They come with responsibility, they come with consequences. And when we're doing that, when we're thinking about eating the Tim Tams or not, we're not rebelling against, oh, I'm not supposed to, or they say I can't, whatever. We're actually kind of just saying, well, do I want to? Do I want the consequences that go with that? I know, you choose. It's up to you, right? So when we step into that adult brain rather than the child brain, child mind, we tend to make more adult choices and we tend to consider things like consequences. And so it is really, really important that we kind of just step into this adult brain and do whatever work you need to do, whether it's something you can do reading books and things or whether you need more support. But to kind of change those stories that you had when you were a child and change your language and start to understand that you have choice. The other thing about choice, there's a sort of whole. I was listening to a podcast once, and sorry, I can't remember who it was that was speaking on this podcast, but he was actually talking about freedom. And a lot of the time, we talk about freedom when we talk about we want freedom, and a lot of our life is talking about being free. Oh, well, I'll be free when I don't have to listen to my parents, and I'll be free when I don't have to work for this person, and I'll be free when I don't have to do whatever the government says, whatever it is. But we're kind of talking about freedom and talking about wanting to make our own choices and not wanting others to tell us what to do, right? And that's fair enough. That's fine. That's a human thing that we want that freedom. But one part of the freedom that I think sometimes we don't understand or we're not prepared for is that freedom comes with responsibilities, right? Because there's freedom from. So freedom from is, I don't want to do what that person says, or I don't want to be restricted. I don't want to follow the rules. I want to do my own rules, whatever it is. So freedom from is like the not having to do what somebody else says. But then there's freedom to. And freedom to is something that we don't always think about. And freedom to essentially is, okay, now you've got freedom. Now you're not having to do what the man says or what the person says or what the boss says or whoever it is. Well, now you've got freedom to. And freedom to is like, well, what do you do? Now you've got your freedom. What do you do with it, right? And I know it might sound silly, but that is something that we don't always think about. And we end up in all sorts of trouble sometimes. Think of the sort of, you've just turned 18 and now you can go to the pub and drink all night, which you can in Australia. Freedom too. And we do the thing and, consequences aren't so great, right? So freedom too is that we have choices. So it comes back to what I was just talking about before, is when we understand freedom, freedom's not just about from, but it's also about to. So it's not just freedom from having to do or think or be what somebody else says, but it's also the freedom to do or be whatever it is that you want to do or be. And that requires you stepping into your adulthood and saying, okay, I do have freedom. There is choice. So, what are the best choices for me to make? And how am I going to structure my life so that that is supportive of me and my health and my goals? And this is, I know I've noticed this a lot in my life since I've been working for myself, right? So when you work for yourself, there's a lot of freedom, right? There is and there isn't in different ways, because there's not freedom because you can't just kind of go home and not care about things and not worry about things, because you've got to think about how to pay the bills and how you're going to pay staff or how you're going to pay whatever it is, but how you're going to get your next client, whatever. So there's a lot of burden that comes with working for yourself as well. And I could do a whole podcast on that. But essentially the thing about it is, though, also there's a lot of freedom in that, okay, when I need to be somewhere with a client or doing, on media or doing a presentation, whatever it is, okay, I'll have to be there in that place. But in between those times, what I do with my time, well, that's up to me. So, I could spend the day watching Dr. Phil on the lounge if I wanted to, eating the Tim Tams, right? Whatever it is, I could do that on some days in some situations. I could plan my days however I want to, really, because I work for myself. So there's freedom too. The problem with that, though, is I have to, essentially what you need to do is, as an adult, we have to actually create boundaries for ourselves, the same as we do for children. Children need boundaries, and so do adults. We need certain boundaries. And so when you have freedom too, part of that is, okay, what do I want to achieve? What do I want the outcome to be? What's that going to look like? How am I going to get there? But then it's like, well, what boundaries do I need in my life? And it's not boundaries to so you miss out. It's just boundaries so that you achieve, right? Because if you can do anything and anywhere, be anything, there's nothing that's just all over the place, right? So if you want certain outcomes, you need to do certain actions. There's things you need to do. You need to do that to make that happen, right? So essentially, we need to create boundaries. So, I've created boundaries for myself, which is I don't put the television on throughout the day. On a work day, I just will not do that, right? And I've got boundaries around how many breaks I have. Like, I have breaks, but I just have a real awareness around that. I've got boundaries around how much housework I'll do, because I work from home now, how much housework I'll do on a work day, right? Because you could very easily spend the whole day doing housework and not get your work done. So I've kind of got to say, hey, I know the floor needs vacuuming and I know the bathroom needs cleaning and all this sort of stuff. However, today's my work day and I'm at work now and get the work done, right? So basically, I have to create boundaries around what are my rules, what are the rules I use to help me manage my work day. And it's the same with with nutrition. I kind of go, well, what are the rules I have? And there's certain foods that I just won't have in the house, or I'll have a food in the house, but I'll only buy one, and I'll do it once a week, and I have it on Friday night, whatever it is. But I create boundaries around that. So my boundaries are that I only buy certain things, I only stock certain foods in the house, and then my options for things like snacks or meals or whatever, they're limited. There's a certain range of foods that I have and that I can use, and I use those and I have those. Those boundaries help me to stay well. They help me to, and I go to bed early most of the time, and I make sure I get enough sleep. All of the things I do. So essentially, as an adult, we need to create new stories in our lives. And the story is that it's our story, and it's our story to create. And what is it that we want to create? And, sometimes life happens to you as well. I've already done some podcasts talking a little bit about that. I'm sure I'll talk about that more in the future as well. But it's our story and it's our story to create. So we've got an old story, but the old story is just an old story, and it was just a story and might have been a useful story at the time. However, often the old stories are no longer useful. So we need to make a new story, and we need to make and the story needs to, well, it's got to support whatever it is that you want to happen in your life, what you want your life to look like. So we create certain boundaries and we create certain habits, and we do that so that we get the outcome that we want. So it's really a lot of things in life are about stepping into that adult energy, leaving behind that childhood thing. It doesn't mean we can't have the childhood thing, but when you know, yeah, there's a child part of you that wants to have fun, all that stuff, you can choose that as well, right? So that is why you actively choose to listen to the music you love and sing along to your favorite song in the car, or I'll put on a song throughout the day and I'll kind of in one of my breaks and I'll dance around, be silly and sing along and enjoy a song. You might have a colouring in book, you might do craft, you might do art, whatever you do. But we obviously, there's things that we do to feed that child and to support that child because that child wants to have fun and joy and things like that. So I'm not telling you to ignore the child in you or shut down that part of you. However, what we need to do is make sure that that child is not running the show. So there's a difference between embracing the child in you and doing fun things and supporting and loving and nurturing that child, which is something that we all need. And that could be a whole episode on itself. Difference between that and letting the child run the show, kind of drive the car kind of thing, right? So it's the adult that actually needs to be in the driver's seat, and the adult creates boundaries, and the adult creates boundaries for the child as you would with a physical child that you birthed or that you look after. It's the same with the child within you, right? So you create those boundaries for that child, but you also create nourishment and nurturing and fun for that child. So we need all of those things. So when we want to achieve things in our life, we have to just understand: are we working from the adult? Is the adult in the driver's seat, or is the child in the driver's seat? If the child is in the driver's seat, are they kind of responding to old stories, old things that sort of gone, done? What's going on there? Or is a child jumping in the driver's seat because we're ignoring the child and not looking after it and not doing anything joyful or fun? I know from a point of view of things like emotional eating, one of the things I see with my clients is sometimes people just have no joy in their life. And the chocolate is the only thing that brings them joy. So your child is going to have something to say if there's nothing of any joy in your life. So it really is important to create moments to have some joy. Doesn't mean you're happy and joyful 24/7. That's just not possible. It's just not. It's not realistic, not possible, and it'd be a bit weird to be in that state all of the time. But we need to create things that are fun and things that are joyful and have moments of that in our life, right? So that's an important part of all of this. So my question to you is: are you in the driver's seat? Is your adult in the driver's seat? And the maps you're working from, are you working from maps that are from old stories that were ingrained in you, that were kind of programmed in you when you were a child, that you kind of either had to do things you had to do to get through childhood, or just somebody else's opinion, somebody else's ideas? Is it your map or is it somebody else's map? And is it the child driving or is it the adult driving? When you can start to look at those things and understand your behaviors and understand what you're doing, we can make changes. But what one thing that one mistake that we often make is you'll do a course or you'll read a book or you'll kind of do a list of like, these are all the things I want to do, or this is from now on, these are the good habits I'm going to have, and this is what I'm going to do to look after my health or to achieve this goal or achieve that goal. And one of the reasons it doesn't happen is we've kind of got this underneath that, the kind of the setup, the groundwork, the foundation we need for that. The foundation we need is somebody who's a grown up who's running the show, and a story that's working for you, and a roadmap that goes with that story, right? That goes with the new story of who I want to be and what I want my life to look like. And if you've got those things in place, then great, you make your to-do list and you create some boundaries and you make some choices about how you want your day-to-day to look like and what outcome that's going to give for you. Um, that's going to work beautifully. But if you kind of just write a to-do list and you're struggling to do it, I would uh, I would invite you to kind of just go step back a bit and have a look at who's running the show, what's going on there. Get some professional help if you need to. There's no shame in that. I've had plenty throughout my life. So if you need professional help to kind of figure out what's going on there and to kind of delve into some of painful or difficult stuff from the past, absolutely do that. But essentially, we need to understand what our stories are. Are those stories still working for us? Can we create some new ones? What do we want those to look like? And make sure that the adult's in the driver's seat, but the child's still being looked after as well. And when we do those things, then what happens is it is much easier to achieve the things and to get through the to-do list and to achieve your goals, because everything is in alignment with achieving that, and you're not finding yourself sitting there with the Tim Tams rebelling against who, right? So we have this whole rebellious thing, and but who are we rebelling against? We're a grown up now. There's no one to rebel against. We need to embrace and nurture and nourish ourselves so we can achieve what we need to achieve. Anyway, I hope that that was useful. I hope it was helpful. And remember, you can always book a consultation with me online at informedhealth.com.au. Anyway, I hope you have a great week. And I want you just to sort of invite you just to think about, what are the stories you're running with? Are they still helping you? Who's in the driver's seat and who needs to be in the driver's seat? And is your child being cared for in amongst all of this, your inner child? Something to think about, something useful to think about. Anyway, have a great week, and thanks for tuning in. Talk to you next time. Bye.